Our next guest is the author of the critically acclaimed book, Ohio. His latest novel, The Deluge, was published today and is available wherever you buy your books. Please welcome to the show, Stephen Markley, everybody. Show. I am thrilled to have you here.
Thanks
I loved your book, Ohio, which is also a long, wonderful book. I was surprised to learn that you had sort of started this book even before you started Ohio. This is a book 12 years in the making.
Yeah, started both of them at about the same time. Set aside The Deluge to finish Ohio. Came back to it with about 40% of it done. So 13 years in the making, really.
13 years in the making, and it is about a deteriorating climate situation. And I'm wondering, when you write a book about our climate in 2012, do you have to go back and change things based on the fact that obviously it's happening year in and year out? It's getting worse.
The hardest part about the editing process was making the zippers of the teeth fit together, right? So it had to meet the moment. So I'm constantly revising in these last 3 years based on stuff that's happening in the news, you know? The situation where plot points I'm concocting in 2012 are suddenly headlines in 2022. And even with like just a small example, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I'm like racing back through the book on fourth pass to try to account for that because I had it happening in 2032.
So you were you're a little late, but also very impressive. Congratulations,
yeah.
But just a little late. Because this takes place from 2013 to 2040.
Yeah.
And again, it's this sprawling book with all these characters. And, you know, Ohio, a lot of dark things happen in that book as well, but one of the reasons I couldn't put it down is I cared so much about the characters. And is that one of the keys when you write a book about this as well? Obviously, it's very scary stuff you're writing about, but what makes you not want to put it down is you care about the people in the book.
It's scary because it's abstract. So I feel like the way in is always through human beings. And the point of a book like this is to emotionally reorient the reader around what's happening. So we can actually feel in our hearts what the stakes of this moment actually are.
You have climate scientists in the book. Obviously, there's a great amount of science in the book. You, I'm assuming, talk to many of them.
Just a few, yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the big pleasures of the process was I met James Hansen, who is the NASA scientist who, in 1988, testified before Congress, and he was one of the first people to sort of bring climate change to the public's attention. So he was gracious enough to give me an hour, and you don't even know what you're looking for in those moments, but definitely shards of that person ended up in a character in the book.
Do scientists worry when they talk to a fiction writer that you're going to take what they say and then put it on the page wrong?
I'm sure, yes. But so does the news media. So
yeah, exactly. I guess that's probably worse, right? Even in this book, a lot of the scientists are frustrated by the fact that they feel as though they're trying to be as clear as possible, and the news media often boils it down to the place where it's no longer scientifically accurate.
Right. Well, I think like in approaching, all the science is happening in the future, right? So I'm making guesses, educated guesses about where we're going. So there's that added layer of fictionalizing our very, very serious situation.
You got some very high praise, which I think speaks to the readability of this book, because I would argue the most readable author in the last 100 years is Stephen King. Stephen King wrote about this book that it is, simply put, a modern classic. If you read this, you'll never forget it. Coming in January, I'll remind you, prophetic, terrifying, uplifting. What was it like when you saw Stephen King tweeting about your book?
Not bad. I grew up a total Stephen King fanatic. So basically from ages 11 to 14, I read everything the guy had published to that point and continued to. But, you know, as a 12-year-old up until 3 a.m. reading Gerald's Game, unfortunately, I think that informed my personality too much. But look, it's such an honor. And I wrote a letter to him. He tweeted about Ohio. I wrote a letter to him, like sent it to my editor, sent to his editor, just basically saying like, look, dude, you were one of the reasons I wanted to become a writer. Like, whatever you could do, that mesmerized me as a kid.
That's really cool. I want to, mostly just because I feel like this one's going to really stay with me, a second tweet about it. More terrifying than The Stand because it's real. So that's really made my bones hurt.
I just want to, when I die, I want to be remembered as the guy who freaked out Stephen King.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good thing to shoot for. I do want to go back to something he said in the first tweet, which is he ended by saying, you know, again, terrifying, but he also said uplifting. So you have spent all this time, you've talked to scientists, you wrote this book about how bad things could be, and yet, I think it's important to say, you still have hope. Where does your hope come from?
Yeah, okay, so it's not like in the course of writing this novel, I didn't feel overwhelming, constant despair. I won't lie about that. I think where I arrived, though, is that, oddly enough, there is joy and there's privilege in being alive in a time when our actions as citizens and as agents of history will echo for what is effectively the eternity of human civilization. You know, we have these precious few years left to set in motion epic change, and we have every tool we need to rapidly decarbonize the global economy. Renewables are the cheapest energy, right? We have the IRA now, the Inflation Reduction Act, and this puts power into the hands of everybody, state, local, school boards. Like, look down to your school board. Like, down to that level, we have power to decarbonize. We crush demand for fossil fuels by rapidly electrifying everything. We keep pressure on the big banks to stop financing the destruction of our world. And we vote every election, no matter what. And we vote for people who actually treat this crisis like it's the biggest emergency we have.
That's something I think we can all agree on. It really is. I can't speak to how back-to-back times you've just written these really long, wonderful books that are really hard to put down. It's such an accomplishment. Thank you so much for being here, Stephen.
It's so great to meet you.
Stephen Markley, everybody. The Deluge is available now wherever you buy your books, but please support local and independent bookstores. We'll be